Okay, folks, we're going to get stuck into this dissertation. There you go, into this presentation on dissertation writing. What I will say from the very beginning is that this is not about your particular subject. This is a very general framework in how you can prepare, organize, and execute the production of your thesis or dissertation or whatever you're actually doing which fits into this particular area. And what we do is more about planning, organization, but most important, we're taking the pressure off you. We're trying to limit the amount of work that you're doing, but also maximize your writing time. We're looking at a variety of different visual ways and to use the natural senses in gathering data. Also, let me make clear from the very beginning is that I'm someone who in their undergraduate degree actually ended up doing 5 dissertations in 2 years. Obviously, since then, I've done a number of other dissertations and stuff. But within those 2 years, at periods, I had to produce very, very quickly. 2 weeks, 4 weeks from scratch. Because of circumstances, I had to produce very, very quickly. So when you think that you've only got 4 or 5 weeks to produce a dissertation, I will say to you, it's possible. And the story that I always give is of a dear friend who was producing a history dissertation, and this person actually was in a wheelchair, had a lot of things going on at the time, and also was epileptic, but managed to write a 10,000-word dissertation in about 36 hours and come out with the first. So what I'm saying is it's all about organization and ordering the tasks that you have to do. So in my mind, anything's possible because I've seen it happen. So let's begin to start on this. Right. Okay. So this presentation is about preparing for the dissertation process, simplifying the writing process, how to prepare ahead of time, plotting your progress, etc. How to become what I call a spider. You're multitasking. Hence, with the octopus, you've got a number of legs. You're doing a variety of things at the same time. How to utilize your supervisor. This is a very, very important thing, especially for postgraduates, master's students who are here over the summer period, and invariably what happens, you suddenly find out that you're trying to contact your supervisor and he's on holiday. Nightmare situation. It happens every single year. So we tell you how you can actually take that into account and are able to kind of consider that when you're doing your planning and also your writing. So, for those who had come along to my presentation on exam revision, then 1 or 2 of these things obviously will sink in your head. I've moved them around, I've kind of like organized it in a way they have other meanings, but it's basically the same. This is very important. Eating elephants. As I've always said, a late professor who was here, Dr. Maura Pilo, who's now advising for universities across the country, her philosophy was that for any task, no matter how large or how many small, you break it down. You can't always see the whole big picture. You can't see the whole elephant because it's bigger than us. So all I'm seeing is the side of an elephant when the rest of it is around me. That is very much how we see a dissertation. It's so big, it's a frightening thing. It starts sprouting horns, etc., etc. It's actually quite scary because you don't know where to start. And what I always say to students is this. If you've got 10,000 words, don't see it as a 10,000-word dissertation. See it as a number of essays and other writings inside. So if you've got 10,000 words, you may have 1,000 words for the introduction, you may have 2,000 words for 3 chapters or 4 chapters, and finish off with 1,000 words for a conclusion. Hence the 10,000 words. I've already broken it down, haven't I? And within each of those chapters, you can break it into subsections, and you can then break those into other sections, into paragraph. But what you're always doing is that you're always breaking it down into digestible pieces that you can see, and you can stand back and you can see what you're actually dealing with. Hence, what I said at the very beginning of this presentation is that if you're really pushed and you're up against a wall and you have to write very quickly, you've got all those little tasks in place and you can bang it out really, really quickly. But you've got to break those things down, hence eating elephants. The first thing that I always say for students is that you've got to prepare the ground. You've got to prepare the environment for writing your dissertation. Organisation and planning is the most important thing here. Why? Because if you're able to order your week, you will possibly and hopefully write ahead of time. So, as we know, the summer term in this university and a lot of universities worldwide for postgraduates and master's students is that they begin to go very quiet. People go on holiday, things shut down, various departments that may have helped you with various things, they're shut or they're on half slow, etc., etc. So the quicker you knock this thing out before that begins to occur, the quicker you can actually begin to do the editing process. It's the editing process, for me, is the major thing here. If you've got time to edit it, then it's like tightening up a screw. You're tightening and tightening, sharpening and sharpening, tightening, until you've got a really good piece of work. And hence, that's where your big marks come in. So you need to devise your weekly writing and research schedule. You need to think of what kind of learner you are. Are you a morning person? Are you an evening person? Are you an afternoon person? Utilize that time when your brain is sparking, when it's kicking off, when it wants to do something. When it's a bit more tired, a bit more relaxed, then maybe do some research. But it's when you're at your height of energy and at the height of organisation, that's when you start firing off your clever ideas. So do please use that moment of the day to really express yourself within your writing and other things you have to do. So what's important is that by devising your weekly writing and research schedule, as we will see in a minute, you are able to kind of not just write, but research. Researching is not about just reading. For most of the time, for doing a dissertation, you have to get background reading, background knowledge. You have two choices. You either sit for 5 to 10 hours in a library and try to push all this data, text into your head, or you can actually begin to target your reading, but after you've watched things on YouTube, on the kind of Harvard, Yale, Berkeley YouTubes, or, for example, you can find things on the university, on the kind of blogs, and also, more importantly, you can then sit down and take that information in. It takes a couple of days, but that is your basic research. And then you can go on to the writing and doing all the other activities, but you need to get that grounding. And that's a problem, because that takes time usually. You can spend weeks and weeks doing your research. No, there's an alternative to that. We have the technology, as I use the terms from the Bionic Man, we have the technology, let's use it. The internet is a wonderful place. We've got many, many academic sites there that you can get data very quickly and watch, especially when it comes to problem solving. Sometimes you can find information from a professor or someone who will simplify the kind of things that you're trying to write about. Hence, you can then sit down, watch it, take a few notes, stop, start it, go back, and then begin to put it into your own words. And that's actually a very important thing. We want to reduce your reading time through other ways, as we said. We want to kind of visualize the process. You can listen, you can do all manner of things, as I will show you in a minute. And of course, the biggest thing is you want to give yourself breaks. I always say when you're writing a dissertation, write or work between 6 and 8 hours a day, but breaking that down into 2-hour slots. So you've got 2 hours, nice big long break, 2 hours, nice big long break, and so on. You're not wasting time when you have that break. You're sitting down in a cafe or you're sitting down in a restaurant. You even may actually kind of place yourself in a cafe on campus all day, writing and then having a coffee, looking around you. But it's that time, as I have found in the past, is when all the little ideas begin to kind of shake down and they begin to filter down and you're making sense of what you've watched or you've read. And also, more importantly, your brain's in the back going, right, how am I going to write this baby? How am I going to put it in order? And that's the important thing. So, for example, when we are preparing our basic week plan, we take the lectures out. You can use those lectures as maybe study times, but you've also got, you put in your meals, so you're regulated, you're organized. As I kept saying in the other presentations this week, it's not about how clever you are, it's about how organized you are. And in actual fact, this has a lot more relevance to dissertation writing sometimes than exam revision, because you've only got a certain amount of time to write it. It's like I say to most of my students, because I teach students who are dyslexic or who have a number of different learning differences. I'm dyslexic, and I've also got ME, so I'm tired half the time. But if you utilize those hours, then you're not tired. You have a lot of energy. But the other thing is, and it's most important here, is that you're able to kind of take a step back throughout the process of writing and researching and see where you are. And that, to me, is actually very, very important. So, where are we? Planning week. So, planning week. I always say 28 hours a week writing and researching. That works out about 6 to 8 hours a day. Not too much. So if you're a morning person, you may get up at 6, work till 8, have your lunch and breakfast until 10, potter about, go for a walk, come back. 10 to 12, have your lunch. 2 to 4, have a break. And then you've got 6 to 8 and have your dinner, or the other way around. So you get to bed early, you get up early. But obviously it depends on the individual here. But what you're doing is you're creating a really core organization process. So when I was, a few years ago, when I did my first master's, I was working, and of course I was absolutely exhausted, but I was writing a dissertation, 20,000 words, and I actually only had about 10 weeks from beginning to end. So I was working until 5 o'clock every day from about 10 o'clock. So I would get up in the morning about 5 o'clock. I would work for 2 hours till 7, have some lunch, some breakfast, go back and write for another hour, go to work until 5 o'clock, come home, write until 7 o'clock, have a break, then write from 8 till 9, and then I would start again. So I've got 6 hours. I produced it. So I was working a lot, and I had my particular illness to deal with as well. But the point I'm making is that if I can do that, anyone can do it. And hence why I gave the example at the beginning of this lecture. Space yourself in 2-hour work schedules. List tasks ahead of the day or week. What am I going to do this morning? What am I going to do this week? What am I going to do tomorrow? Of course, what you can do, as I will show you in a minute, you can begin to have little kind of post-its on this plan that I will show you in a minute. But basically, then what you're working up then in with is that you've got a whole thing here. So here we go. I've got 6 hours to study there during the day, and I've got some video work where I'm sitting down and watching a documentary or some YouTube or lectures or whatever on my subject, and then I get into writing. I'm better actually in the afternoon, so and sometimes in the morning, so I might actually begin to write from 10 till 12, and then maybe have an hour video work researching, think about it, have my dinner, my lunch, and then straight in again in the afternoon. I've got myself an order. I've color-coded it, so I know exactly what I'm doing. By 9 o'clock, I go to bed, or I go out with some friends and relax. Treating yourself, to me, is as important, if not more, than writing itself. So, before we go on to, I want to talk about dealing with the supervisor. This is something that I've actually put here because otherwise it would fall down the bottom of the presentation. But usually, this is the most difficult thing for some students, especially for master's students, as I said earlier on, because half the time it appears that during the summertime, it is very hard to get hold of your supervisor. They're on holiday, which is fair enough. They've been working all year. But it's hard to track them down. But also sometimes you don't know what the balance is. How much do you take from them? How much do you feel they should contribute to your writing? How much of their expertise should you tap into? How much would you have to use them, their work, yourselves in your own work? These are kind of key things. I think with balance, I mean, to me, it's always a 50-50. It's always trying to kind of get them to give you the information, but obviously they're not going to write anything for you. They're not going to do the work for you, but they can guide you. However, if the supervisor in your mind is not guiding, then do ask. Do not be afraid to ask. It's a cooperation thing here. The more they cooperate, the more you're able to fulfill your outcomes of your dissertation writing. So it's quite important that from the very beginning you create some kind of schedule or some kind of working relationship with your supervisor so you know when they're going to be in during the week, not just turning up and they're gone. So, and maybe every 2 weeks you want to submit something. In some departments they will only see you a number of times. You're only allowed to submit pieces of work a number of times. So put that into the context of the plan, as I will show you in a minute, you have to do. Again, know when they're on holiday, get writing drafts and done ahead of time, and find an alternative, if necessary, to have proofreading it. If your English is your second language, or you have a learning difference, or you just want someone to go and see that there's some kind of order or some kind of organisation in it, then there's lots of options in the university. Here, for example, we have our study surgeries, we have our English cafe. On a Thursday night, we'll be doing this stuff all over Easter. But generally, most universities will have something where you can get something proofread. Even a friend, possibly, an English speaker, you can get to go and proofread it and make sure that you're actually, your sentences, etc., are making sense and you're making your points. Right. Okay. So, before we get actually into planning, when you put things in what order, when you plot, when you're organising your pieces of work during the week and during the terms, I think there's something that I've been using with students, and most students who have been using this method found it very, very useful. It's called the LATTE principle. So if you have a spare piece of paper there, I recommend that what you do is that you draw yourself a kind of a latte glass, a beer cup, etc., on that piece of paper, and then you break that into about 3 or 4 strips. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you want to. So you begin to put things into order, and this is ideal for a proposal, it's for a literary review, it can be used for anything, an essay, you name it, it can be used. I had trouble drawing a latte this morning, so I didn't put it onto the PowerPoint, but it's quite simple. So you get a glass, and a glass shape, and you break it into sections. Now, obviously, for a dissertation, as I will show in a minute, a kind of an optional order. And again, you can find these on the internet very easily. Just put in dissertation template, literary review template, and actually on our own study skills and English Cafe Facebook, we've got all this information that we've been putting together now, so you can look at it there. However, so you begin to order these things, so you get an idea of what it's going to look like. So you may have your introduction, you may have your first chapter, your second chapter, third chapter. If you're doing a proposal, you may have your introduction, your title, your introduction, you may have your literary review, you may have your methodology, and so on. It's like Heinz baked beans. There's 57 varieties and more. So there's not one way to write a dissertation. Hence, you've got to find out through your department and the book what it asks you to put in there. Usually they give you a nice little list. We want you this, and this, and this. So you create that into your latte glass. And then you begin to put different things into each of those little blocks, into those categories, subsections, until you've actually got a complete plan. And I'll show you in a minute what these kind of plans, a variety of things, but generally that's how we do it. It helps you again to stand back and to see what you have to do. Again, you're eating the elephant, you're breaking it down. I can see the trunk, I can see the leg, I can see the ear, I can see the tusk or whatever. I'm actually able to see each bit that I've got to write. What you can also do with that is begin to put next to that subsection or section how many words you feel you want to put into it. So, as I said, back to 1,000 words for an introduction possibly. You might want to put 2,000 if you're going up to the 20,000 mark of a master's. You may want to put each chapter, say, 3,000 or 4,000, depending on what type of degree you're doing. You may also want, for example, to kind of have a literature review, a methodology. You might do a much more science or management-based degree, which will have your results, etc., etc. And I will show you that in a minute. So there's different requirements for different departments. So you need to know that, and then you can begin to break it down and see what you have to do. But remember, this is your key to writing, as we will show in a minute, where you begin to plot each of your activities through your weekly plan and through the term plan that we will do. So you deconstruct until you find the right size for you to digest. So if you've got to write things in 500 words, you think about it. You could write 500 words in one day. Hence, back to my wonderful colleague who had been an ex-soldier, a sergeant major actually, and he was so organized, hence why he was able to put that order and organization into writing it in basically 36 hours. Because he knew how to break tasks down. Regimented he was. You're doing exactly the same thing here. You know what you've got to do each day and each hour. So, ordering. I'm going to give you a couple of options here. Again, this is for a literature for a dissertation proposal. So, what I've got is that, again, this can be applied into each of your little sections on your LATTE. So for a proposal, I've got a title, a statement of the problem, the background and history, a literature review, a theoretical framework, methods and procedures, proposed chapter outline. So, what is the problem? What am I looking at? What's the thing I'm trying to solve? What am I approaching? What is the subject matter that I'm trying to deconstruct and present to my supervisor? What's the background and the history of this subject? Has it been looked at before? Is it perfectly new? Have we kind of discovered this area or field before? If so, who's been talking about it? Why is it in the news? Why is it important for me to write about it? Why is it important for the department? Literature review. Who's been writing about this thing? Who are the authors, the key authors that I want to take into account? Who are these people that I want to kind of deconstruct and talk about their main theories, their main findings? And how do I compare and contrast this with other people? How do I compare and contrast this with other studies? Are there other studies? Again, that's something you've got to find out. Because as I found out to my shock and horror when I went into a PhD kind of upgrade, that there was actually someone who wrote something almost on the same that I was proposing, but I didn't know about it. So you've got to be able, it's quite a shock for me, I had to go back to the drawing board, but it's all about knowing your literature. So it's very, very, very important that you dig like a mole to find what's out there and compare and contrast. What's a theoretical framework with this? How are you going to use this piece? What kind of theories do you want to bring into this particular piece of work? What's the methods and procedures? What's your methodology? Are you going to do mostly archive work? Are you going out into the field using qualitative or quantitative work? Are you doing interviews? Are you doing surveys? Are you doing kind of in-depth interviews? Will you be traveling? Will you be going home? Will you be doing your research in a foreign country, into Greece or somewhere else? Where are you actually going to do this thing? Explain it. Obviously, you give your proposed chapter outline. What are my main chapters? What are the main things that I'm going to be doing? And finally, obviously, you're looking at bibliography. You're looking at the kind of putting down the main sources that you'll be using. This is very much for a proposal. Obviously, again, look in your handbooks, in your department, and find out what they suggest, but you're breaking it down. This would work into about 2 pages. When I was teaching years ago, this was something that we did every year for our undergraduate students, and they had to put it on two sides. About 500 words to 1,000 words. Easily done. Okay, so let's look, for example, if you were writing a dissertation. This is how it kind of begins to break down. You've got your little abstract. This should include a summary of your results and the possible implication of your research for future study in the field. However, this doesn't need to be very long, but it could be for some departments. Not that long, but it could be anything from 30 or 40 words up to about, say, 100. Dependent. You've got to look at your handbook and they will explain it. Also, don't forget to put your contents page. It looks very nice. You've got a variety of little ways you can do this. You can either do it, 1.2, 1.3, then the next chapter will be 2.2, 2.3 again. It's helping you to break it down into little bits. So you're giving each title or each kind of overview of each of those sections. Again, it looks smart, it looks organized, and most importantly, it looks professional. The more professional it looks for a dissertation, there may be a chance, let's all hope, that you get published. We all know someone who's had a dissertation published if it goes down well with the department. So that's your aim, because that's where the big marks are. Okay, so you need your introduction. You need to give a kind of overview of what the subject is, go back to your proposal. What do you want to do? What's your justification for it? You need to actually then begin to look in the context. In what context are you writing? What's going on around? Are you using different theories? Is there a problem you're trying to solve, etc.? You need to kind of have a research question, justification, methodology, literature review. You don't have to have all these, but dependent on your subject matter. You may want a research question. You may want aims and objectives. Again, look online for options for your discipline. This is very, very important because you're using the internet to guide you. You're not plagiarizing, you're not copying anybody else's stuff. What you're looking for is for guidance and information to make yours very, very spot on with what you're trying to say. So, you can make a literature review, a methodology. Sometimes you may not have a literature review. Your methodology may sometimes be very, very small, half a page. A reverse of that may be 5 or 6 pages. I did 20,000 words of a literature review. 20,000 words for a literature review. I think I must have aged 20 years during that period, but I actually did 20,000 words. So it can go from different levels. Main body of your research. You want to break it down into your chapters. You may have a methodology chapter. You may have a results chapter. Have a discussion chapter. All these are substantial chapters. You may have a chapter with graphs and findings and pie charts and all the lovely little things which make it very colourful. I also say, as we're talking about colour, is that when possible and when it's applicable, bring in pictures, bring in graphs, liven it up. Because I tell you something, for someone like myself who's supervised about 5 or 6 dissertations over the last few years and also teach this subject, it can be very, very boring just to see black and white for about, 40 or 50, 60, 70, 80 pages worth. So brighten it up, make it bold, the titles, make a bit of pictures when necessary, lots of colourful graphs if need be, but bring it alive. It's important because the reader and the supervisor may help them to actually digest and understand your subject. Obviously, a conclusion. Within that conclusion, a summary of the main contributing ideas, and of course, other and future research. Where are you going with this? Can it contribute? Might it say something for what's going to happen in the future regarding this particular field? You are giving a nice understanding, but more importantly, showing the reader that you're very aware of where this research is going. Hence, you know your onions, you know your subject. Even if you feel you don't, you are telling that reader in writing that you are. So again, this time you're blowing yourself up to be an elephant and not a mouse. Even if you feel you're an only second or third year student writing a thesis, the way that you write and the way that you express yourself illustrates to me and to them that you know your subject. Okay, so let's look about, yes, a literary review, because I know people have been worried about this. Again, same kind of thing. So a literary review, no matter how big or how small, you'll have an introduction, introduce the literature. How much literature is there? Is it new? Is it old? Is there any new literature on the subject? Who are the key authors, possibly, that may be coming into this? Break down into your main body. Again, use your LATTE principle. Break it down into themes. You've got different key themes. You may have, let's say, for example, if you sat down and you looked at your research, you may find that there's 3 or 4 key themes or areas that can produce what I call mini chapters. So you may have 4 or 5 authors in each of those semi-chapters. And you can then compare and contrast within that. Again, look online for models and guidance on this, because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of opportunities for you to see the phraseology, the way that information is written, and the way that they actually kind of order and compare and contrast. How do I write it? How much information do I write on each author? Do I write more on my key authors? Do I write more on my secondary authors? Nearly every university I found online is beginning to actually give you examples of the writing style that they want in a literary review. There's actually a couple of YouTubes that I've actually put on to our own Facebook page. So please join up and look at those by some professors in America. It really is good, really helps. Future research, again, what may be coming up. Also going to be more stuff written on this. Don't forget, when you're looking for your sources for your literary review, don't just limit yourself just to the library. Google has its wonderful Google Scholar, loads of stuff on there, and lots of other archive, MetaLib, etc., within the library. Don't limit yourself just to the books or the bibliography in your department. Okay, so we've got all that information. We've got all our lattes. We've got all the stuff that we've got prepared. We know what we want to do, how it's breaking down, how our literary review looks, how our dissertation looks, etc., etc., etc. So now we need to do the biggest game of all. We need to begin to plan it. When do we do what? Hence, the first thing I say to you is this. Bang it out. Get it done really quickly. I don't mean that in a way that, you make mistakes, but get it done quickly. Hence, the quicker you get it done, the quicker you've got time to really begin to put clothes on it. You get time to really tighten it up, make it look good, make it the best piece of writing that you have ever done. So it's not about just writing it, it's about making it, editing it, especially if English is your foreign language. Or in my case, dyslexic. I put in my first thesis and I went for my viva. They loved my viva, but my thesis was all over the place because of my writing. I didn't find the time, I didn't get the help to actually edit it and correct it. The second time, they loved it because I then spent all my time, I rewrote it actually, and banged it out, and then I spent months editing it. I had 80,000 words. I edited it until I was blue in the face, and they loved it. So I'm telling you, don't make that mistake. Bang it out quickly, make it look good, get the order. Even if you put in brackets, adding quote, get the story down on paper. That's the most important thing. So you need to divide the snake, as we will see here, into weeks. This is obviously for the academic term. You can draw one of these or print the one off the Facebook and begin to make your own weeks. What weeks, when where the holidays are, how long you've got, 12 weeks, 14 weeks, 2 terms or whatever. But you're able to give yourself, as we said, tasks for each of those weeks. Maybe 2 weeks for research, 3 weeks for research, 1 week to write the introduction, another week to write maybe a literature review or whatever. And then you can put that back, as we said before, onto our week plan, so we know that what we've got. Keep moving around, apologies for this. There you go. We can then begin to say, okay, on the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours. I'm going to write my introduction. Bingo, it's off. On Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, well, Saturday, I'm going to have my day off on Sunday so I can go for a little walk, let all the little things settle. But Friday and Saturday, here we go again. I'm going to knock out my literature review. Now, for the gentleman sitting in the audience who has 4 weeks to write their dissertation and he knows who he is, this is how you do it. You break it down. You've got a big task every day. Hence, the LATTE principle comes into being here. You take that latte and you turn it into a snake, and vice versa. It's the menagerie of visual learning. You are creating options here to help you to write more succinctly, but also on time, within the deadlines that you've got. So, as we can see, you want to plot these weeks, and then you know when your deadline is. You can put the deadline, let's say sometime in September or wherever. You can get that done. Now, I did 2 dissertations in my undergraduate degree. We were lucky then that I could actually do them during the summer. I had to start at the end of June and submit it by the middle of September. I had 12 weeks, roughly. And I did it. I did 2 of those over the summer period. I had to start from the very beginning and I had to get it written. Even the research I hadn't done. So it can be done. 4 weeks, 6 weeks. If you plan yourself along this way or a similar means, then you're able to see yourself on your progression and you get the task done quicker. Again, we're back to the whole idea of learning. I've used in my other lectures. As you can see, we only remember 10% of what we read, so we need to use the bottom of that pyramid. We need to look at things. We need to watch things. We need to listen to programs. There's so many websites, radio stations, documentary sites where you can actually listen to data on your subject. I knew one student, bless him, who actually spent all summer watching the History Channel. Absolutely loopy. But he got so much background information on the subject he was doing that he was able to kind of give a very good baseline on his topic and then obviously add his targeted reading. Also, if we bring into the idea of visuals, we need to see where we are. Apart from just writing things down, obviously piling things. Don't forget when you're writing your little sections that morning, you get all your little papers, you put things in the order, look at your latte, you put the things in the order that you're going to write them. So you got, what's going to be the first paragraph, and you put your piece of paper or your author at the top, and you work your way down, and so on. That is the quick way of writing. Okay? So the thing is, we also need to be able to see that information and see how it fits together, because it may change. And one way of doing that, obviously, is to create yourself a map. So you can create a map of sections and paragraphs, choose a technique suitable to yourself. Sometimes people make things come alive, and obviously use lots and lots of colors. So it may turn up to be something like that. This is from IQ Maps in America, who I've used before, and has given us permission to use this, but basically this gentleman is producing maps in a way that helps you, gives you ideas of how you can begin to segment different sections or parts. This isn't just for exam revision. This could be my whole dissertation. Actually, the last piece of work that I wrote some years ago, I had a huge A0, A1 piece of paper on my wall, and every day I broke it down, right, what am I going to write today? But I've already actually put all those things on there, remembered it, photographed it, stuck it onto me computer, and then when I'm writing, if I suddenly forget, up it comes again, got to write that. And I can mark it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I know the order, the paragraphs. Again, back to writing quickly, back to banging it out. So, for example, what I always say to students is this. If you're doing preparing for a dissertation next year, hence you've got to kind of get it in 2014, I always say bang it out during the summer. Do your research, knock out the framework, get it all there, and then you can add to it over the following in your third year or whatever. Because then this map will help to guide you through that and write quite quickly. Right, so getting towards the end, what I will say regarding the stress busting, because it can be very stressful, writing a dissertation, is this. Again, eating elephants, break it down into little bits. Spoil yourself in terms of sleep, food, and activities. Writing a dissertation can be absolutely exhausting. You're dragging out data, screaming and kicking and hanging on to the doorknobs, not wanting to be moved at all. I don't want to budge. I'm tired. I was writing 6 hours yesterday. I've been watching a documentary for 2.5 hours, etc. So you need to get yourself at least 6 to 8 hours sleep, but more importantly, you need to maybe rest during the afternoon. I used to go to bed between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, wake up, and bang out 1,000 words because I'm fresh and I'm ready for action. Be able to stand back and see, where are you? Where am I with my information? Where am I with my work? What have I performed? Is that consistent with what I've just written? Does that make sense? Does that fit with this? Does that fit with my introduction? Sometimes you may write the introduction last. You may write it first. Doesn't matter. But you need to be able to see where you're going. And finally, be a lateral learner and use all the devices that there are in the book. Okay? What is there? What can I use to make this task simpler? As I said to someone the other day, they're doing some work on engineering, on alternative energies. Well, the first thing you do is go down to a place where they're actually working with it and see it, use their archive, etc., etc., etc. That's a lateral thinking process. Then you're going to come back with a lot more brighter and fresher ideas. Find a conference online. Find a place where you can talk to the people that you're going to be using. This is what I call lateral thinking. Okay? And finally, I'm just going to show this, is that this is where you can find some information. We will be putting this website, this video again onto Grisdale's site, but also most important, this video and all the other things I've been talking about, the various other YouTubes, will be put on our Facebook pages, the English Cafe and Study Skills. Thank you very much.